Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in every era when destiny chooses a man, not because he is the strongest, not because he is the loudest, but because he carries within him a vision that others cannot yet see. And when such a man is chosen, he finds himself walking a path that is often solitary. Why does a chosen man always walk alone? Because the crowd fears what it does not understand. The chosen man thinks differently, speaks differently, dreams differently. He dares to go where others dare not even imagine. His footsteps echo in places where silence has reigned for centuries. And so, the crowd watches him from afar, too hesitant to follow, too blind to recognize the light he carries. The chosen man walks alone because leadership is a lonely road. To lead is to make decisions that may never win applause. To stand for truth is to risk rejection. To uphold values is to face opposition. He may lose friends, he may lose comfort, but he never loses his conviction. And that conviction is what keeps him moving, even when the road is steep and the night is dark. History testifies to this truth. Prophets, philosophers, scientists, reformers, all who were chosen for greatness faced isolation. Socrates drank poison for daring to question. Galileo was condemned for declaring the earth moved. Visionaries are mocked before they are celebrated, rejected before they are remembered. And yet, the chosen man does not stop. He knows that solitude is not emptiness, it is strength. It is in solitude that he sharpens his mind, polishes his character, and listens to the whisper of destiny. He walks alone not because he despises people, but because he is preparing a road for them, a road they will one day walk when they are ready. So, if you ever find yourself alone on a path that feels heavy, do not despair. Perhaps you are chosen. Perhaps your footsteps are writing history. Remember, eagles fly alone while pigeons flock together. The higher the calling, the lonelier the journey. And that, my friends, is why a chosen man always walks alone. Here are 7 keynotes for why a chosen man always walks alone. Vision separates him from the crowd. Truth often invites rejection. Leadership is a lonely road. History's greatest stood in solitude. Solitude strengthens conviction. The chosen prepares the way for others. Higher callings demand lonelier journeys. A chosen man is not separated from others by wealth, titles, or outward appearances, but by the uniqueness of his vision. He sees what others cannot see, and he imagines what others do not dare to imagine. This difference, though subtle at first, becomes the very line that divides him from the crowd. For vision is not just about sight, it is about insight, foresight, and the courage to look beyond the ordinary. When a man is chosen, his eyes are open to truths that others either overlook or deliberately ignore. And the moment he begins to walk in alignment with that vision, he inevitably finds himself walking a path where few are willing to accompany him. The crowd is comfortable with what is familiar. It clings to tradition, habits, and the safety of conformity. Most people find reassurance in numbers, in doing what everyone else does, in thinking what everyone else thinks, in living as everyone else lives. But the chosen man is not bound by the comfort of the herd. His vision disrupts the familiar patterns and demands a higher, often uncomfortable path. When he speaks of his vision, many dismiss him, calling him unrealistic or even foolish, because he dares to imagine a reality that has not yet been born. Take, for example, every great innovator, thinker, or reformer in history. They were always ridiculed first because they saw a future that others could not even conceive. When the Wright brothers spoke of human flight, people laughed. When Nelson Mandela spoke of freedom for all, many called it impossible. When prophets declared truths that challenged corrupt systems, they were persecuted. The chosen man walks alone, not because he desires separation, but because his vision naturally sets him apart. The world is rarely ready for the visionaries who are born into it. What makes the journey of such a man even more difficult is that vision often demands sacrifice. To chase a higher purpose, he must leave behind the temporary comforts of the crowd. He may be misunderstood, criticized, or even betrayed by those closest to him. The chosen man's vision requires discipline, perseverance, and faith in something invisible. It is not easy to explain to those who cannot see. How does one describe light to those content with darkness? How does one convince the satisfied that there is more? This is why the chosen man often carries his vision in silence, allowing time, action, and results to speak for him. But though this separation feels like isolation, it is not a punishment. It is preparation. By being pulled away from the noise of the crowd, the chosen man is granted the stillness necessary to nurture his vision. In solitude, his thoughts become sharper, his spirit stronger, and his mission clearer. While others chase the applause of the moment, he builds the foundation of tomorrow. While the world celebrates short-lived trends, he invests in timeless truths. Eventually, what once seemed strange becomes the standard. The same crowd that doubted later admires. The same people who mocked later follow. Yet, the chosen man understands that this acceptance is not the goal. The goal is the fulfillment of the vision itself. His separation was never about superiority, it was about responsibility. He was chosen not to walk with the crowd, but to walk ahead of it, preparing a path that others might one day find the courage to walk too. Thus, vision separates him not as a mark of pride, but as a mark of destiny. And though it cost him companionship and comfort, it grants him purpose and immortality in the hearts of those who will one day see what he saw long before them. When a man is chosen, he becomes a bearer of truth. But truth, unlike flattery or illusion, is not always welcome. It does not comfort the ego, nor does it please the crowd. Truth shines a light on what many would rather keep hidden: hypocrisy, injustice, and the illusions that people build their lives upon. And because truth can be uncomfortable, even painful, those who speak it are often rejected before they are ever respected. The chosen man finds himself standing on the sharp edge of honesty. He sees the world not as it pretends to be, but as it truly is. He notices the corruption that is normalized, the deceit that is accepted, and the lies people tell themselves just to feel secure. When he raises his voice against these illusions, the reaction he receives is not gratitude but hostility. People defend their chains more fiercely than they defend their freedom, for chains are familiar and freedom is frightening. And so the man who tells them they are not free is seen not as a friend but as a threat. This is why truth-tellers in history have often been exiled, imprisoned, or silenced. They did not fit into the mold of society because they refused to lie, refused to conform, and refused to accept what was false. The rejection they faced was not due to their weakness, but precisely because of their strength. When Christ challenged the hypocrisy of the religious elite, he was crucified. When Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of equality, he was hated and hunted. When Gandhi declared that justice could be won without violence, he was opposed by both colonizers and his own countrymen. Rejection is almost the price of truth, and the chosen man understands this. What makes truth so difficult to accept is that it demands change. It forces people to question the comfort of their habits and the safety of their illusions. Most would rather live with a convenient lie than face an inconvenient truth. Lies make life seem easier, but truth demands transformation. And transformation is painful. Thus, when a chosen man speaks truth, the crowd feels threatened. Their rejection of him is not truly about him, it is about their resistance to change. The chosen man must therefore carry the burden of rejection without bitterness. He must realize that being cast aside is not a sign of failure but a sign that he is indeed chosen. If everyone embraces his message too quickly, perhaps it was never truth to begin with, but simply another pleasing illusion. Truth, by its very nature, divides before it unites, wounds before it heals, offends before it enlightens. The rejection he faces is proof of its power. Yet, this rejection is never the end of the story. Time has a way of vindicating those who stand by the truth. What the crowd mocks today, they may honor tomorrow. The voices they once silenced often become the voices they later study, quote, and admire. But the chosen man does not wait for their approval. His loyalty is not to applause but to truth itself. Even if no one listens, even if rejection becomes his constant companion, he continues to walk his path. In solitude, he learns that truth is not about popularity but about integrity. To hold truth within, even when the world denies it, is to remain faithful to his calling. He accepts rejection as part of the journey, for he knows that those who reject him now may one day awaken and realize he was right. And even if they never do, he has fulfilled his duty as one chosen to carry truth. Thus, the chosen man walks alone, not because he seeks isolation, but because truth has set him apart. Rejection, though painful, becomes his silent crown. It is the sign that he dared to stand where others bowed, to speak where others stayed silent, and to live by truth even when it cost him everything. Leadership is often admired from a distance, but seldom understood up close. To the crowd, a leader seems powerful, honored, and surrounded by people. Yet, behind the surface lies a truth that few recognize. Leadership is, at its core, a lonely road. For the chosen man who carries the burden of leadership, isolation is not an accident, but an inevitable part of the path he must walk. A leader is set apart not by privilege but by responsibility. While the crowd enjoys the freedom to follow trends and make choices without consequence, the leader must think not only of himself but of all who depend on him. His decisions ripple outward, shaping lives, communities, and even generations. The weight of these decisions often cannot be shared. Friends may advise, followers may support, but in the end, the final choice rests on his shoulders alone. This burden of Galileo too stood in solitude when he declared that the earth revolved around the sun. In his time, such an idea was considered heresy, and he was persecuted by both the church and society. Yet it was his lonely defiance that paved the way for modern science. He bore the pain of isolation so that future generations could live in the light of knowledge. Spiritual leaders provide the same testimony. Moses stood apart as he led his people out of Egypt, often opposed by the very ones he was guiding. Jesus walked in solitude, betrayed by friends, abandoned by followers, and crucified for a truth that shook the foundations of power. Prophet Muhammad endured years of rejection and hostility before his message was embraced. Their stories remind us that solitude is not abandonment, but preparation. The chosen man stands alone so that he may lift others toward a higher way of life. Even outside religion, solitude marked the lives of reformers and revolutionaries. Abraham Lincoln carried the loneliness of holding a divided America together. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, cut off from the world, because he dared to envision a land of equality. Martin Luther King Jr. faced threats, hatred, and betrayal while carrying the dream of justice. Each of them bore solitude as a cross, but in doing so they carved their names into history. What made these men and women great was not the absence of struggle, but their refusal to surrender to it. Solitude tested them, refined them, and proved their strength. They discovered that greatness cannot be borrowed from the crowd, nor can it be built on the shifting sands of popularity. It is forged in silence, in moments when no one else believes, and in the courage to keep walking when the path is empty. The crowd remembers only the triumphs, but the chosen man knows the nights of loneliness that preceded them. He knows the sting of betrayal, the silence of deserted friends, and the weight of carrying a vision alone. And yet, he also knows that history is written not by the many who stayed silent, but by the few who stood alone. Thus, when we say that history's greatest stood in solitude, we acknowledge a truth that is as old as time. Solitude is the price of destiny. The chosen man must accept that loneliness is not a curse, but a crown. It marks him as different, as one set apart, as one whose life will echo far beyond his own generation. For it is in solitude that he is tested, and it is because of solitude that his legacy endures. There is a difference between being alone and being lonely. For the chosen man, solitude is not emptiness but a sacred space where strength is born. It is in solitude that he finds the clarity to hear his own thoughts, the courage to examine his heart, and the discipline to stay true to his path. The crowd may see isolation as weakness, but the chosen man knows that solitude is his greatest teacher. It is the furnace in which his conviction is refined. When surrounded by the noise of others, a man can easily be swayed. Opinions, expectations, and judgments pull him in different directions until his vision becomes blurred. But when he steps into solitude, the distractions fade. He learns to listen to the quiet voice within, the voice that whispers of purpose and destiny. In that silence, he discovers who he truly is, apart from the masks he wears for the world. Conviction is not born in noise, it is born in silence. It is in moments of solitude that the chosen man finds the strength to stand firm, even when the whole world pushes against him. Greatness requires more than talent or opportunity, it requires unwavering conviction. And conviction is not something gifted by the crowd. It is something that grows in solitude, watered by reflection, tested by doubt, and strengthened by perseverance. When no one is there to cheer him on, when no one believes in his vision, the chosen man must decide whether he will continue. Each lonely step he takes without applause deepens his conviction that his mission is worth pursuing. History proves this truth. Many of the world's most enduring figures were shaped by long seasons of solitude. Think of Mandela in his prison cell, deprived of freedom but not of purpose. It was in that silence, away from the noise of politics and the chaos of the outside world, that his conviction hardened into unshakable steel. Or consider writers, philosophers, and inventors who spent countless hours in solitude, wrestling with ideas that would one day change humanity. Their strength came not from public approval, but from the conviction they forged in private. Solitude also protects conviction from corruption. When a man is constantly surrounded by others, he can be tempted to compromise, to bend his truth in order to gain acceptance. But the chosen man who embraces solitude is free from this pressure. He does not need the validation of the crowd to affirm his mission. Instead, he learns to rely on a higher calling, on the inner certainty that what he pursues is right. This independence of spirit is what allows him to walk a path few would dare to tread. There is also a spiritual strength that solitude brings. In the stillness, away from the clamor of the world, the chosen man often finds himself closest to the divine. He learns to draw strength not from fleeting applause but from timeless truth. Solitude becomes his sanctuary, a place where his soul is replenished and his vision renewed. It teaches him patience, resilience, and endurance, qualities that no crowd could ever give him. Though solitude is often misunderstood, the chosen man accepts it with humility. He understands that conviction cannot be bought or borrowed, it must be built in the quiet places of the heart. The silence that others fear becomes the soil in which his strength grows. And when he emerges from solitude, he does not return weaker but stronger, a man who knows where he stands and why. In the end, solitude is not a punishment but a privilege. It equips the chosen man with the unshakable conviction needed to face rejection, opposition, and trials. It steels his spirit against the temptations of compromise and prepares him to fulfill his destiny. For without solitude, conviction would remain fragile. But with it, the chosen man becomes unmovable, a living testament to the power of walking alone. The journey of the chosen man is not merely about his own growth or personal fulfillment. His path, though lonely and difficult, carries a purpose far greater than himself. He walks alone not because life has denied him companionship, but because he has been entrusted with the responsibility of preparing a way for others. His steps carve a trail through the wilderness, a trail that those who come after him will find easier to walk. In this sense, his solitude is an act of service, a sacrifice that clears the obstacles for future generations. The chosen man is often ahead of his time. He sees possibilities and truths that others are not yet ready to grasp. Because of this, he cannot expect the immediate support of the crowd. They cannot yet understand what he sees. But as he forges ahead, he leaves markers along the way, lessons, principles, and examples that will one day guide those who awaken to the same vision. The chosen man may never enjoy the fruits of his labor fully, but his labor ensures that others will. His life becomes a bridge between what is and what can be. Think of pioneers in science who were ridiculed for daring to challenge accepted beliefs. Their discoveries often cost them reputation, peace, and even safety. Yet, their work laid the foundation for advances that benefit billions today. Their solitude was not wasted, it was the price they paid to prepare the world for progress. Or think of reformers who stood against injustice, often suffering imprisonment or exile. Their resistance planted seeds of freedom that later generations would harvest. They endured the pain of walking alone so that others might walk freely together. This principle is deeply woven into human history. Every great movement, every leap forward, began with a solitary figure willing to prepare the way. These figures rarely saw immediate acceptance. Their vision was too radical, their voice too different, their actions too bold. But over time, their example became a torch passed from hand to hand. The road they cleared became the road others would march upon. Without their willingness to endure solitude, progress would have remained impossible. Even in spiritual traditions, this truth shines. Prophets and messengers endured years of rejection and suffering while laying the foundation for faiths that would one day guide millions. They often knew that their mission was larger than their own lives. They prepared a way that others could follow, even if it meant carrying the weight of solitude for the sake of future light. The chosen man does not measure success by applause, but by the path he leaves behind. In many ways, his solitude is a silent gift. The lessons he learns in isolation become wisdom for others. The battles he fights alone become victories others inherit. The hardships he endures carve shortcuts for those who follow. His sacrifices, often invisible at the time, become the unseen pillars supporting the progress of society. Though he may feel alone in his lifetime, his footsteps echo in the lives of countless others long after he is gone. What makes this reality even more profound is that the chosen man often knows he may not live to see the fullness of his vision. Yet he continues, not for recognition but for responsibility. He understands that destiny is not about personal gain but about collective transformation. He prepares the way with faith that someday someone will walk it, and when they do, they will understand why he had to walk alone. Thus, the chosen man's solitude is not wasted suffering but purposeful preparation. His loneliness clears paths, opens doors, and lights lamps for those who will one day walk after him. He is the forerunner, the pioneer, the bridge builder. And though the world may never fully understand him while he lives, they will one day walk safely on the road his solitude carved. Every man is called to something, but not every calling is the same. Some are called to live ordinary lives, to remain within the comfort of the familiar, to walk the well-trodden paths where the crowd travels. But when a man is chosen for a higher calling, his journey can no longer resemble that of the multitude. The higher the calling, the narrower and lonelier the path becomes. To carry a destiny beyond the ordinary is to accept that solitude will be the constant companion of the chosen. A higher calling is not a privilege